Well, it's Essendon versus Carlton, the Bombers versus the Blues in the King's Birthday Eve game, a new tradition now in its third year. It's had over 80,000 people for its two instalments so far, so it looks like it's been a roaring success. We're going to preview the game and everything about it right now. If you like this content, hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm when you do that. It will ensure that you never miss a video. It doesn't cost any money, and it only takes 1 second to do so. So as you can see, about 67% of people are not subscribed. I'd love it if you are not subscribed to click that subscribe button. It would help me out a lot. I'd really, really appreciate it. So when I was growing up, this was the game. This was the big game. For those under the age of 30, you might not realise how big these games were in the 1990s. I mean, forget Collingwood. This was the big clash of the year, the Essendon and Carlton games. I've been to over 50 Essendon and Carlton games over the course of my life. And back in the 90s, really, this was the big clash that both clubs would look forward to above every other clash. The fact that they had the most premierships at the time before Collingwood sort of equalled it this year. They were the two most successful clubs. Essendon's biggest rival, really. That's the Blues would be our biggest rival. And right through the 90s and into the early part of the 2000s, these clubs would just at each other every week, and we hated each other. And whilst we don't really like each other now, it's changed a little bit because both teams haven't really done anything for a generation, which is unfortunate because I think it would be actually good for the sport. Whether you are a neutral fan and you like and you dislike Essendon and Carlton as neutral supporters, I think it would be good for the sport generally if we had both these clubs back up again, competing and contending for premierships. I think our list is in pretty good shape for, not necessarily for this year, but I think our list is building nicely. I think Carlton are in a bit of strife just with their depth. I think they've got a good lot of top end talent on their list, but I think it does fall away, and they might have missed their window, their premiership window. We'll see. We did see a couple of years ago the Blues were in a similar position and went on a tear and got all the way through to the preliminary final. So you just never know. But it does feel a bit different this year with Carlton, just with their, they're a couple of years older, and it sort of doesn't really feel like they're progressing. But we'll see. We could probably maybe end their season, not in a mathematical sense, but we could probably realistically end their season if we give them a victory, or if we have a victory over them in this match on Sunday night. So here are some of the key team stats that both teams have. I'm going to go into these in a little bit more detail in a minute, but here are just some of the broad numbers. There's a couple of areas where Carlton are particularly good. One of them is contested possessions, you can see there, and the other is inside 50s as well. They have 9 more than us. One of the things that they are particularly poor on is disposal efficiency. They are actually ranked last in the AFL, could you believe? Ranked last in disposal efficiency. And I'm just going to get into a couple of those numbers quickly. Here are the numbers. So Carlton are last for disposal efficiency. We are 4th, so we are pretty good in that particular stat. But if you look at kicking efficiency, if you split it up into kicking and handballing, Carlton are 17th, so they're pretty much unchanged. We're 14th in kicking efficiency, but we're 1st in handball efficiency. So I think that tells you about the fact that opposition teams put pressure on us when we have the ball. And that's particularly evident in the fact that we rank minus 9.5 in marks, in terms of marks differential per game. Like Essendon's opponents average 9 more marks than us. Carlton are plus 11.5. They're one of the best in the competition. Yet, in terms of marks per game, we rank 5th in the competition with 94. We're one of the highest marking teams in the competition because, we chip the ball around and play this high possession game. And yet our opposition have more marks than us on a per game basis. And there's no doubt with our kicking efficiency much worse than our handball efficiency. It's really a case of the opposition, especially the teams that have had success against us, putting pressure on us when we have the ball, and we're unable to put up with that pressure. But we did see something heartening against the Brisbane Lions. We saw Essendon start to go more direct after quarter time. And I thought this was interesting, and I thought it was also something that we should all be very happy about, because I think the coaching staff might have learnt a little bit about the team from that Brisbane game. And we started to not chip the ball around. We had less uncontested marks, and we started to go more direct, and we started to get more results out of it. And I think this is something that could play into the game on Sunday night. Why? Well, if you look at the weather forecast, they are expecting a little bit of rain. Not a torrential downpour, but rain. And this normally would not help Essendon, because we've traditionally, over a long period of time, ever since, playing at Marvel Stadium, to be honest, we have not been a particularly good wet weather team. But this may help us for a couple of reasons. One, it takes Curnow and McKay, not out of the equation, but it obviously makes it more difficult for them to take contested marks, which would help our very, very short backline. I mean, one thing you don't necessarily want when you have a totally undermanned backline is perfect conditions, allowing their two big key forwards to be able to take a lot of contested marks. So that probably limits that from Carlton's point of view. It also hopefully forces Essendon to not necessarily want to play more of a possession game. But we showed against Brisbane that we can control the ball, but we can move it a bit quicker and not just chip it around and have this huge amount of the ball, but have a ridiculous amount of low meters gained. You might remember in some other videos we've had we were negative in sort of meters gained in comparison to what our opposition get, even though we have more of the ball than them. I think if it's wet, it kind of forces you to move the ball a bit quicker, and it's something that could almost play into our hands if we're smart about it. But that's the key, if we're smart about it. If we're not smart about it and we fall back into our old habits, then it could be a negative. But if we use it as a means to sort of slightly alter the way we play, move the ball a bit quicker, be a bit more attacking, it's something I think that could help us, especially with Carlton's tall forward line. And I wonder I think these injuries are obviously a very, very bad thing for us. There's just so many of them. But if there's a silver lining, and with 9 or 10 negatives, there always might be one positive. And one silver lining might be, it might alter the way we play, just because it forces us to alter the way we play. We have no choice. We've obviously got a much smaller lineup, and it forces us to play to our strengths. Now, what are our strengths? Well, our midfield at the moment is our strength, because our midfield is largely untouched. Really, we have Darcy Parish and Dylan Shield playing in the reserves at the moment. Right, that's how strong the midfield is. So, really, you've got Merritt in there, you've got Martin, you've got Durham, if he's selected. I know he had an ankle, but let's presume he'll be right. You've got Caldwell, who's one of the most underrated players in the competition. And then you've got Parish and Shield and Setterfield, if those players are selected. I'm not saying all of them will be. We've got a pretty good midfield, and it kind of forces us to play to our strengths. Now, our strengths before the season started probably are some of our key position players. We're pretty deep in the ruck, and we're pretty deep in our key position backs. Well, we're not deep in those at the moment with injuries, but we are pretty deep in the midfield, and that is one area that we might be able to exploit and get an advantage on. And that's one thing I'm excited about with this game. I'm excited about how we attack it, how we approach it, and whether we can actually turn a disadvantage into an advantage. Now, at the end of the day, Carlton's big key position talls might be a bit too strong for us, but one thing they don't have, Carlton, is a lot of depth. It falls away very, very much so, I think anyway, after their top 5 or 6 players. If you just have a look at their team on paper, this is their team last week. They had a bye, of course, or the last match they played against the GWS Giants. They've got some pretty good players there, but it does fall away a little bit. I did a video in the pre-season ranking the depth of all the teams, and Carlton came up last. They had less depth than any other team in the competition. So if you can stop their best players, and Patrick Cripps doesn't have a good record against Essendon. He has had some poor games against Essendon, and we have stopped him and played well against him in the past. If we can stop some of their better players, we've got every chance of winning this game, right? Because it does fall away, at least in my view. If there's any Carlton supporters watching, let me know what you think. But I think it does fall away a little bit after their elite players. But then again, your elite players tend to be the ones that win games for you. So, they've obviously still got a pretty good midfield. Sam Walsh, Patrick Cripps, George Hewitt is one of the best performed players this year, probably having the best year of his career, Sarah, all these sort of players. They still have a capable team, but certainly I wouldn't necessarily believe that this is an unwinnable game. We are capable of winning this game, and I think the match against the Brisbane Lions has given us all a little bit of belief that we can do it. So if you look at the Essendon team from last week and whether there will be any changes. So the only possible change, well, there's two possible changes. One is that Durham comes out through injury. I'm anticipating he will play. Good thing is we do have a 10-day break. And look, he did play out the game, right? It's not like he stayed on the bench. He stayed on the field and actually kicked the goal, right? Even though he was hobbling a little bit. So if he's playing, out on the field, you would hope that he would be right in 10 days' time. So let's go with that. But one thing I do think we're going to see, I think we're going to see Darcy Parish back in the team. So Parish has played 2 games in the reserves. It's kind of like 3 because the week before those 2 games started, he had there was a bye in the VFL, so he couldn't play in that. But he had a more intense training schedule that week to make up for the fact that there was no VFL game. So if it wasn't for that, he would have played 3 VFL games. So he's kind of played 2.5 VFL games, if you like an intense training session with a VFL bye, followed by 2 VFL games. And that's about, I think, what he should have. He's been one of our best in the VFL in the 2 games, and he's not a VFL player. The other thing, he's getting paid a lot of money, right? He's on a lot of money, right, with this 6-year contract. It's too much money to have floating around the VFL, right? We want him in the seniors, and we want him playing at his best. And if you're not going to bring him in after 2 games in the VFL, when are you going to bring him in? And there's, enough players on our list that he's better than. I mean, he's better than Hobbs. I think he's going to come in for Hobbs. That would be my prediction. He's better than Hobbs. He's probably better than Day Wicks, right? Zach Johnson, young player. I want him to stay in the team. I like Zach Johnson, but obviously first gamer. He's probably a better player than him, right? There's no reason why Parish can't force his way into this team in the place of either Hobbs or Day Wicks. So I'm anticipating Parish to come into the team. I think if Durham comes out of the team through injury, Shield will come in. But we need Durham in the team. I'm expecting a big game from Setterfield this week. I think Setterfield will go to Cripps. Setterfield is playing against his old team. Players tend to play very well when they're playing against their old team. He'll be fired up. And I think he's an underrated player for us, Setterfield. He's kind of like that forgotten midfielder. We've got the Merritts and the Durhams and the Martins and Caldwell and all this, and just sort of a quiet achiever is Setterfield, sort of playing that role where he can tag and he can get the ball a bit. He sort of plays a bit of a unique role that no one else can really do on the team. So I'm expecting a big game from Setterfield. Just going back to a couple of the key numbers, because I think it's worth noting. I always like to highlight the big differences between a couple of key numbers. Sometimes a lot of the stats don't tell you. Clubs are pretty similar from one stat to another, and one might be 8th in one stat and 9th in another, and what difference does it make? One particularly big difference is contested possessions. Carlton, in contested possession differential, that's differential compared to what their opponents get per match, is number 1 in the AFL, and they're number 1 by a mile. It's not even close. Their contested possessions is plus 12.5, and that's first in the competition. We are 7th. We're pretty good at plus 3.5. But the second team in the competition is plus 7.5. So Carlton are plus 12.5. There's 5 difference between them and the second best team. So that's a huge advantage. So if we can win the ball at the coalface, I think we can win this game. That's a big if, of course. We might not be able to. But if we can win the ball more than Carlton, that's their strength. And it's a strength by such a big extent that I can't think of another number that one team dominates that particular stat more than Carlton do this year. I mean, they're not just first, it's daylight between first and second. All right, so that's a really, really big number. They also average plus 8 inside 50s per game, and we average minus 7. But as I stated earlier, their big deficiency, Carlton, is their disposal efficiency. They're the worst in the competition. So they turn the ball over by both foot and by hand. They're not good at disposing of the ball, but they're good at winning the ball at the coalface, and they're good at getting it inside 50. So this is going to be a really, really interesting game. I'm interested in how the weather plays into it. Normally, I'd be upset with a wet weather forecast. I think if we're smart, we can make it work for us. Maybe. We'll see. My prediction in this game, I I'd love Essendon to win this game, but just with the injuries, I think it's going to be close. I'm going to pick Carlton by 10 points, but it wouldn't surprise me if we're capable of winning this game. The Brisbane game gave me a bit of heart. I think it all gave us a little bit of belief that we can enter any game and that we have some sort of chance, even if we're an underdog. I think the Blues do deserve to be favourites. And let's assume it's not raining and it's not particularly, wet unless it's an absolute downpour. Really, it's going to be difficult for us to stop Curnow and McKay. We're going to need a big team effort down there. It's not going to be up to Laverty and Redmond on their own. We're going to need to double team these players. That's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to make sure when the ball gets down there's a big pack and we have 2 or 3 players thwarting Curnow and McKay. They don't have a lot of small forwards, Carlton. Right? They got rid of Owies I think you pronounce it, to West Coast. And they really don't have a whole lot of, genuine crummers who are quality. I mean, Motlop's not really the player that he perhaps could be. They've got, who else have they got in the forward line? Fogarty, Haynes, Blake Acres. I mean, they haven't really got, players that are genuine good small forwards. So if the ball does hit the ground, which is what we want, with our smaller forward line, our smaller back line, we should be able to mop it up, I think. And we're capable of winning this game. I just think it might be a bit beyond us with the key backs out. But I'm definitely not writing it off. So what do you guys think? Who do you think is going to win this game? Is there anything I've missed? Are you looking forward to it? Do you remember what it's like when these games were big? Let me know, because I'm a bit of a stickler for, I'm pretty passionate about the old Essendon and Carlton games. They are very, very fond memories for me. I love the 93 grand final. God, wasn't that fantastic, beating the Blues in the big one. So let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe to this channel. Leave a message in the comments. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.
They'll try their best, but they can't get near as the